Welcome back to Dukascopy TV. A poll on the front page of Le Monde revealed that 70% of French people feel that taxes are excessive, and 80% believe that the president's economic policy is misguided and inefficient. I have Dr. Frank Hollenbeck in the studio today. Welcome.
Good to be back.
So let's begin with this quote by Jean-Baptiste Colbert. The art of taxation consists in so plucking the goose as to obtain the largest amount of feathers with the least possible amount of hissing. What's your take on this?
Well, France is trying to do the same thing as Italy, is to reduce their debt. They're basically increasing taxation. France, in the last 2 years, has implemented 84 new taxes, and tax revenues have gone from 44% of the economy to 46.3%. Okay, and France intends to impose a whole bunch of new taxes. They intend to increase the pension tax. They also are going to implement an energy drink tax. They're also going to raise property taxes. You have to realize that property taxes have already increased 21% from 2007 to 2012. And they're also thinking of a data transfer tax. In other words, if you transfer data overseas, you're going to be taxed on that amount. So in other words, they're trying to pull in revenues to the maximum. Okay, and the problem we have is that we're running into the problem of what is called the Laffer curve. And I talked about the Laffer curve before. And basically what the Laffer curve says is that if your tax rates are zero, then your tax revenues will be zero. But if your tax rate are 100%, your tax revenues will also be zero. And the reason is that people simply won't work. In other words, you won't work if the government takes 100% of your income. And that you reach some type of maximum. And if you're on the wrong side of the Laffer curve, basically if you raise tax revenues, it's going to reduce your, if you increase tax rates, it's going to reduce your tax revenues. Now, Vauban in 1707 estimated that the maximum tax rate was about 30%. Charles de Gaulle said it was about 50%. The empirical literature is a bit all over the place. Some studies have shown it to be between 30 and 35%. Some studies have shown it as high as 70%. But the problem we have with the Laffer curve is, in my view, is that there's a short run and a long run Laffer curve. And the reason is that as you have people have more time to adjust, as people have more time to change their business structure, or they have basically changed their employment opportunities, they can leave the country, go and work into the black market, we're likely to see that the maximum is a lot lower than maybe the 50% that Charles de Gaulle talked about. My guess is the long run maximum rate is probably under 30%. Okay, that means that what France is doing now, it may bring in revenues, in the short term, but the long term is going to simply cause the economy to go into the tank. So that's relatively negative.
Okay, and speaking of taxes and trying to solve debt issues, the IMF recently suggested that Europe bring in a 10% wealth tax. Now, is this the solution?
Well, first, what is this wealth tax? It's basically saying is that we're already taking 75% of your income, which then becomes wealth, and now we're going to tax you 10% on top of it. I find it strange coming from an institution that basically doesn't pay any taxes. But I think what we should read from this is that the IMF recognizes that Europe is in trouble. The only way they're going to get out of the hole is by either confiscating wealth from individuals, such as what we saw in Cyprus, or we're going to have a situation where we have hyperinflation and the central bank basically just monetizes the debt. So what the IMF is basically saying with this proposal is that they recognize that there's no way that Europe is going to be able to get out of the hole it's in all by itself.
And you were right about the US kicking the can down the road. So should we expect to see something different when the issue comes up again in February?
No, I think you can expect the same thing. We're going to kick the can down the road again. And the entity that's to blame for all this is actually the central bank. It continues to, administer Novocaine to an injured athlete, making his injuries even worse. And we have a meeting today of the central bank, and it's unlikely to taper. And we're going to have the bubble continue. The S&P has basically increased 22% since the beginning of the year. However, if we look at valuation metrics, whether it's price to sales or price to earnings, we can see that we're in overvalued territory. And if we look at margin debt, for example, we can see that we're basically at the same levels we were back in 2007. So it's really quite worrisome because when the Fed does start tapering, we can expect a pretty serious adjustment in the stock market.
Great, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And thank you for watching Dukascopy TV. I hope you did enjoy this interview, and if you did, make sure you come back to the website to see many more. But for now, goodbye.